Today's lesson is about learning, organizational learning. And this is really an important topic, especially with regards to change. And if you remember Lewin's model, the basic model is unfreeze, the first part. The middle part is movement. And then the last part is how do you ensure that the changes that you've made are actually continuing to be implemented. And chapter 6 is really all about that. How do you make sure that whatever changes you've done, people are actually sharing the learning, sharing the change that has been done, and making sure that the organization continues on that path. Okay. So another aspect of that is what we call self-designing organizations. Let me just, okay. Maybe I can reduce that so I can see myself a little bit. There you go. All right, so this is the goal of many organizations, is to make sure that change is happening continuously. The learning is happening continuously. So it has become part of their organizational culture. So systemic change process altering most features of the organization in a continuous fashion. Process is ongoing and it never finishes. So when you have this setup where you are continuously learning as an employee, you need, number one, full support of everyone in the company and also the people outside of the company helping, for example, trainers, OD consultants, etc. They have to be helping the organization continuously change. And once you get into that cycle of continuous changing, they say your organization is now a self-designing organization. So, it always sets a new goal, and once they've reached that goal, they find another goal, and they continuously change and redesign themselves to reach that goal. So it's like an ideal setup, because we know that the environment continuously changes, right? So remember Kodak. In the Kodak situation, they didn't really adapt to the environment quick enough. But if you had a self-designing organization, there's a possibility that you could have, addressed that environmental change and to be able to quickly redesign your company. Did anybody here watch the Fujifilm video? It was on Moodle. Anyone?
Yes.
Okay, I highly recommend that because it shows you how a competitor of Kodak was into film as well, was able to transform itself. And you could argue that part of that is the fact that they were very agile. They were willing to adapt to the situation very quickly. Okay, this is from another textbook, and I thought this is a very good way to introduce organizational learning. So, in fact, many experts will consider whether an organization is effective or not depends on how well does it learn. So, how well does it change and how well does it adapt to the situation? And once it adapts, how does it share this knowledge with the other people in the organization? And if they're very good at doing that, generally they're going to be a very good company. They're going to be profitable and successful. Right? So organizations are effective when they find ways to acquire, share, use, and store knowledge. And I'll give you a chart in the next slide just to give you an idea what that means. And once you're very good at acquiring new knowledge, developing new knowledge, and then sharing it with the people in the organization, then this can actually give you a very good competitive advantage. Because every time there's a new technology, you're able to learn it very quickly. Your people are very adaptive, and they're very quick to learn and quick to implement this learning. So this is more than just training. Just because you train someone does not mean that the organization is learning. All you're saying is maybe that person is learning, but if he is not sharing that learning, or if he's not implementing what he's learned, then that's not uh, a good practice. So, Amna, have you ever attended a training given by your company? Amna, still with us, or did she get a cup of coffee? Okay, does anybody and can somebody tell me, give me an example from your own experience about attending a training session? Yes? No? Trang? Tui?
No.
You've never attended a training session?
Um,
Well, I'm sure most of you have attended a class, right? A class here
yeah,
in CIC.
yes.
This is your third year or second year already. So most of you have attended, you've finished, you've completed a course or a unit. Now, my question is, have you been able to use this knowledge at all?
Yes.
Okay, good. But I'm sure not all of it, right?
Yes, not all the.
Yes, but if you in your own work, let's say you're an employee somewhere, uh, if you're not using what you've learned, then the organization is not learning. It's only you that's learning, but you're not using it. Okay, so there's a difference between acquiring the knowledge and also using the knowledge. So it's almost like you learning how to drive a car, but if you don't drive a car, you're not using your knowledge. Okay, so another concept, by the way, is what we call intellectual capital. So if the company is very skilled, the employees have learned how to use, gather and use knowledge, then that is a very high intellectual capital. Okay, so that's what we mean by intellectual capital here. Okay, so maybe I shouldn't show this first. Let me show you this slide first. So as you can see here, if you are acquiring knowledge means that you're attending a training session, maybe you're taking a university course, and you're learning about things, relevant things about management, or it can be about science. Maybe you're working in a laboratory somewhere. You're acquiring that knowledge, but it shouldn't stop there. Aside from acquiring it, you should be using it, using the knowledge in your work. Aside from using this knowledge in your work, you should be sharing it with other people in your company. So you should be teaching other people how to do this, knowledge that you've gathered. Then aside from that, you should store the knowledge. So storing, of course, can be stored in your brain, but that's not very efficient, right? Because what happens to the person who stored the knowledge in his brain and then he resigns? Is that Angela there or Ngan? Are you there?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
Hello. Oh, that's Tui.
Yes.
Angela,
Yeah.
tell me, can you tell me what the difference of storing knowledge in your brain and storing knowledge in, say, a computer? What's the difference? What's the advantage of storing it in a computer?
You can store as many as you can, and when you want to find the file,
you can
log
pull it
in
out. Yeah, easy to pull out, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, but if it's in somebody's brain and that somebody leaves the company, he takes the knowledge with him, right?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So I just wanted to stress that when you store, that's all part of this process, making sure that not just that you learn, you share the learning, you use the learning, but you also store it somewhere so that other people can use it in the future. Okay, so let's go back a slide here, which is the conceptual framework. And there are two terms that I want you to be familiar with. The first is organizational learning, which is enhancing an organization's capability to acquire and develop new knowledge. And then the second step, which is knowledge management, which is focusing on how that knowledge can be organized and used to improve performance. So if you look at going back to this slide, it'll show you that organizational learning is the first part, where you are learning about something, you're gathering or developing the knowledge. But it doesn't stop there. You also have to manage it by storing it, using, and sharing. So organizational learning is the first part, and knowledge management is the second part, making sure that that knowledge is carefully stored and shared and actually used. I will point out, if you remember the ProSci-ADKAR model, what are the stages to that again? What's the first stage?
Awareness.
Very good. Next.
Desire.
Desire. Okay.
Yeah, desire.
The next step is
Knowledge.
knowledge. Right? So knowledge is one thing, and I guess that's what the model is trying to say, is that just because you have the knowledge doesn't mean you are using that knowledge. That's why, or it doesn't also mean that you have the capability of using that knowledge. So just because you know how to bake a cake, if you don't bake a cake, you know how to bake a cake, but you've never tried baking a cake before, you don't have the ability to bake a cake. So the next step of ProSci-ADKAR is you must have the ability. In other words, you're applying that knowledge and using that knowledge. So if you think about it there, knowledge is just this first part, but being able to share and use that knowledge is the second part, these three. Understood?
Yeah.
All right, so this is just the basic framework of organizational learning and knowledge management. And let's watch this video now. Let me just put that aside and watch this video here. Hope everybody can see that.
The opportunity to expand your knowledge and learn something new presents itself daily in what you read, discuss, and literally anything you experience. There's so much out there it can feel like you're drowning in knowledge at times, but when knowledge is managed well, it becomes a very powerful tool. It can improve performance, reduce costs, and even increase innovation. While people have tried to control the creation and consumption of knowledge for centuries, it was recently in the 1990s that knowledge management became an established discipline. BP report to have saved millions through knowledge management, and Sainsbury's have declared savings of around £600,000 per store by adopting knowledge management practices. So what is knowledge management exactly? Also known as KM, knowledge management, like many other things, has been defined by lots of people in different ways. You may find Davenport's definition particularly useful. We do. He says that knowledge management is the process of capturing, distributing, and effectively using knowledge.
So I just wanted to stress that. So it's very, very similar to what you just saw. Capturing is the same as acquiring, and development is the same as capturing. Okay, so All of that is the first part of the process. And then sharing is the same as distributing, and using, as it's also mentioned in the slide I showed you earlier, using that knowledge. Again, all of that is part of knowledge management.
Some examples of KM in practice include the following: building an evidence base to inform work and decisions, identifying root causes and recommendations after an untoward event, organising knowledge so it's quick and easy to find what's needed.
So I just wanted to stress this so you can see that these are some examples. So if you are storing knowledge or storing your reports, your learning into some place you can access it later on, that is part of storage, storing knowledge. Once you develop a system of finding out the symptom and finding out what the root causes are, you can use this knowledge for the future. So every time the problem comes up again and it has the same symptoms, let me just try to mute everybody here again. Mute. Okay. Sorry. So what was I was saying that if you learn about symptoms and what is causing these symptoms, then every time those symptoms appear again, you know exactly what to do. And that only works if you've shared that knowledge and you are actually teaching other people how to diagnose a problem. Okay.
Learning before, during and after projects and programmes, and sharing expertise and experience with others so that they can improve. It really is that simple, and you're likely doing KM to some extent already. In fact, many of us working in health and care are what we would call knowledge workers.
Okay, so an example of a knowledge worker is myself, right? I'm actually sharing my knowledge and the knowledge of other authors with you people. So can I ask you this question right now? How many of you are practicing knowledge management? And if you are, how are you practicing knowledge management at the moment? Amna? Are we still sleeping, guys? Are we not practicing knowledge management right now?
Yes.
Yes, we are. How would you say we are doing knowledge management? Are we gathering knowledge? Are we sharing knowledge?
Sharing.
Are we storing it? Are we using it?
Sharing and using.
Okay,
Yes,
how would you say we are sharing it?
Because you are sharing information.
Okay, good. I am sharing it, but are you sharing it?
No. I'm gaining knowledge.
How would you're gaining knowledge? Very good. But how would you share your knowledge? In this class, are we not? Are you not going to be sharing your knowledge? Okay, when you're doing your group work and you're working on something and you're sharing each other's ideas, is that not sharing knowledge?
That sharing.
That's sharing.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Okay. How about storing knowledge? Are you guys storing knowledge?
Yes.
How?
From listening.
You're storing it in your brains.
Yeah.
That's true. But is there a more efficient way, more effective way to store knowledge?
Practicing.
Is that the only way you can store knowledge? Besides, the thing about if you store it in your brain and then you need to share it with someone, what are you going to do? Stick a USB into your ear?
Reading.
How will
Video.
you share this knowledge to
Communicate.
somebody? Huh? Sorry?
Communicate. Talking.
Communicate, talking. Okay, good. But again, it's not the most efficient way.
Okay.
Just remember, if I tell you 10 things, let me just let in. If I'm telling you 10 things, how many of these 10 things will you remember?
5.
Probably 6, maybe less. For some of you, maybe just 3 out of the 10 you will remember, right? And then if I ask you, oops, what's going on?
It depends.
Okay. So if I tell you to share this knowledge to somebody, I tell you 10 things, 10 lessons, and I tell you share that with somebody. Are you going to be able to share all the 10 things that I've taught you?
No.
No, because you'll forget.
Yes.
So what's a more efficient way to store knowledge?
To read it or like save the document.
That's right. Computers. That is absolutely a more efficient way to store knowledge. In computers, in your notebooks, it doesn't have to be a computer. It can simply be a notebook, right?
Yeah.
Of course, a computer is probably more efficient. The computer is searchable, so I can search for something and then, basically share it with somebody else. Okay, what are the other ways you can store knowledge? How does the school, CIC, does it practice knowledge management? Of course, the answer would be yes. I'm sharing it with you guys. But does CIC store knowledge?
Yes.
How? I'm the teacher, I'm teaching you all of this, right? What if one day, God forbid, I was going to say get run over by a car, but maybe that's a very morbid thought. Let's just say one day I decide to resign and I'm no longer part of CIC. So what happens to all the knowledge that I have? Am I able to share it with other people? No longer, because I'm gone, right? So how does CIC store my knowledge?
From the lecture that you the mini lecture that
Correct. It's recorded on a video.
Yeah.
And where is it stored?
Computer.
The computer too.
Specifically, what website?
The CIC.
Moodle. Yes. So Moodle is actually an intervention. It is a knowledge management activity. Storing things on Moodle enables us to be sharing knowledge to our students and even sharing knowledge to other lecturers. Because one day, if I'm no longer teaching this unit and some other lecturer wants to teach it, then all of that, not all of the slides, all of the videos are actually going to be in Moodle, and that lecturer can actually access that, so he or she can teach that to you guys. Correct? In fact, if I may stress something really important, the fact that you are at home right now, I'm teaching this from my home, I'm teaching you not inside the college, but the only reason why this thing is working is because we have a knowledge management system. We have been able to store knowledge that I can actually gather very efficiently from my home. I don't need to go to CIC and pull out a book, but I can actually I can use Moodle to share that knowledge with you. You can be learning even when you're not in the college. Very important point. And I want to stress, who is doing the All-Star case study?
Me.
Who else?
Me.
Yeah. Ngan, what's your English name again, Ngan?
Actually, I don't take the English name.
That's fine. No, that's fine. I thought you did. So anyway, Ngan, that's fine. Yeah, but Songan and Angela,
Yes.
All-Star, that's a really good case that uses, I mean, that they need a knowledge management system. Correct? Because how are they going to train the people in China if they don't have a proper knowledge management system? Okay, let's put it this way. If I'm going to be your teacher, and let's say I'm teaching you organizational change, but what if I didn't have Moodle? How would I need to teach this to you guys? How can I teach it without Moodle?
Sending through the email, the document through the email.
Document through email?
Yeah.
But then that's in a way, I would have stored that somewhere, right? It means I have, in fact, a book. A book is a knowledge management system on its own, because knowledge has been written down in the book and it can be shared. It's the old-fashioned knowledge management way. But if I didn't have Moodle, in fact, if I didn't have Zoom to share, part of this is the system of knowledge management is Zoom, because we can do this online lecture live with cameras. But if we didn't have that system, I would need to call everybody to come to a classroom and I teach that thing to you guys, correct? So that's what is happening in the All-Star case. Because they don't have a knowledge management system, they need to send their employees over to China to teach. Do you get it?
Yes.
So I want to stress that knowledge management is the reason why they're having a huge problem. They don't have a good knowledge management system. And that's why they hired that supervisor. That supervisor was there to document, to put down in writing all the procedures. Because in the past, they were very informal. They didn't write down the procedures. They didn't write down how to operate their machines. They just learned on the go, but none of this is stored. None of it is being shared. It's all within the brains of the employees. So when they want to share that knowledge, they have to get the employee to go to China to teach. So if you had another way to do it, like a system like Moodle, or even email to send out procedures, written down procedures, then you may not actually need to have a person actually delivering it, right?
Yeah.
So that's the solution for you. In other words, online learning is an opportunity which can actually have a win-win situation, because the employees don't like to go to China. They'd rather stay here.
Yep.
But if they were to cooperate with the supervisor and write down, how to use their machines and all of that, and then they can teach online. Of course, there's a language barrier, but that's all that you can have a translator help you out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they don't actually need to send people to China that often, right?
Yeah.
Maybe once in a while, but not as often if you have a knowledge management system. Yeah. So just wanted to stress that. Okay. We'll go back to that in a few minutes. Let's continue the video.
This is a reflection of how much we use and develop knowledge, so much so that it's become our currency for getting a job done well. You could add that one to your CV. You might be thinking, so if I do this already, what's the point? Why does knowledge management matter to me or to my work? By recognising that what you do with knowledge can become a skill, it opens up the opportunity to improve. KM is something you can get better at. Whatever your starting place, introducing some simple KM principles and practices in health and care will not only save time and money, but it will also improve patient care and experience. It doesn't need to be complex or resource heavy, and it needn't cost a penny. But before diving in, a good starting place is to understand how your organisation currently manages its knowledge. That way you'll know where some small changes could make big improvements. Here are some key questions to ask that'll get you started. How is knowledge captured? Is anything missed? How is knowledge organised? Is everything easily accessible? How is knowledge shared? Are all staff able and willing to be open with others? And how is knowledge used? What's in place to ground decisions in evidence where you work? Once you have a clear idea of the starting place for your organisation, you're set to begin an exciting journey of turning better knowledge into better care.
All right, so that was just an example of knowledge management in practice. It's in actually a health system. It's like a hospital system, and obviously the knowledge that they're sharing there, how to treat patients, etc. Once they're learning new techniques, if they share that with everybody, that's a form of knowledge management. So if you think about the current situation now, COVID-19 situation, where it's a new virus and people really don't know how to treat the virus yet. There is no, what do you call that, vaccination yet for it. So people are learning as they go. But if you did not have a good knowledge management system, all this learning cannot be shared with other nations. And therefore you'd have a disastrous situation, and the virus would probably last for longer unless you had that management system, a knowledge management system. So just to continue with our lecture, if an organization wants to build a culture of continuous learning, or in other words, he wants to have the organizational learning processes in place and knowledge management in place, then that organization needs to have the following characteristics. And the first is the structure. The organizational structure needs to be able to emphasize teamwork and information sharing. And as well, the management style has to be more empowering. What this means is your organization needs to encourage teamwork within certain departments, especially from one department connecting with another department. The structure has to be that it makes that whole process of sharing information more possible. And as well, the management has to be giving more training and more development to its manpower, so that the people within the organization are more empowered to make decisions. So this really means that management is giving them more ability and more opportunities to make decisions on their own. The information systems need to be in very good shape. They have to facilitate rapid acquisition and sharing of complex information to manage knowledge for competitive advantage. Now, what that means is the organization needs to have a very good, for example, digital email system, and also a storage way to store information, like a network system that is easily navigable, and so that people can basically share knowledge easily, and then people can find this knowledge and actually use it. So a great example of an information system, as I mentioned before, is Moodle. So Moodle enables students to be able to access information regarding their subject, but it's also a good system for lecturers as well. So if I'm teaching this unit, and next term I might pass this unit on to another lecturer, that lecturer then has access to all the information, all the materials already on Moodle. So that is actually a knowledge management function. Other characteristics that need to be considered would be the human resources part. Basically, there has to be a movement to reinforce new skills and knowledge within the workforce. The organizational culture has to be one of continuous learning. So HR has to try to work towards building a belief system where employees are actually actively trying to learn new things and chasing after new skills and competencies. And then basically a culture that encourages innovation as well. So management is encouraging people to experiment. Management is encouraging employees to sort of make mistakes, in fact, and that way, when you make mistakes, you basically learn from these mistakes. So, and if the mistakes are not punished, basically it encourages them to basically try new things. Leaders, on the other hand, have to be role models, good role models. They have to be very open to innovation. They have to give freedom to others to make decisions. As I said earlier, empowerment is an important thing. And getting people to try new things while also communicating a very compelling vision to basically to push the company towards a very innovative future. So that's it basically for this mini lecture, and stay tuned for more mini lectures into the future.